Welcome, everyone, to the TBN Israel podcast. And tension has never been higher in the Middle East.
It's hard to say that because it's always super high.
No, this time it's for real, Yair. So, let me recap. Missiles have been flying over Jerusalem. We've experienced just days ago intercepts right above where we're sitting right now.
Yeah, all of us. We were here and we went into the bomb shelter, which was actually our storage room here.
The U.S. is amassing enormous forces on the coastline or around Iran. International pressure is to the extreme. Bombing missions over the Houthi targets in Yemen, and I intentionally separate because the Houthis don't control all of Yemen, at a way we haven't seen before since ever, but definitely not under President Trump. And sure. It feels like everything is on this pressure cooker in the Middle East in a way that I don't remember for a really long time.
I think what's different now is, the Houthis have been firing rockets at Israel and drones for a very long time, so that's nothing new. But we're talking about the U.S. moving significant forces into key strategic areas that have arranged to carry out strikes against Iran directly. I think this is the key elements that are changing. And I'm talking about B-52 bombers, aircraft carriers, naval forces, stuff that can basically take over an entire country if they want to.
Yeah, I think it's B-2 bombers mostly. But yes, to our point, I think B-52 is a different it's a different type of bomber. It's what you use after you achieve aerial superiority. Anyway, all that to say is what brought us to this moment is President Trump comes into the office guns blazing, literally and figuratively speaking. And he says to everyone around him, he says, we're going to end this. We're ending the Iranian issue when it comes to their effect on the Middle East. We're bringing another agreement that's going to loop in the Saudis and going to loop in everyone else. We're aiding the Israelis in ending Hamas as a conflict at the moment. And we're going to reach an agreement in the region. And he moved so fast on many levels. I think a lot of people just expected it to be sort of, a couple weeks of energy and then they move on to the next thing. But that's not what happened. The U.S. pushed in a dramatic amount of military force into this region, saying to the Iranians, pick one of the two hands. In one hand, I give you an option. It's called maximum diplomatic and financial pressure. Take it or sign an agreement. And in the other hand, it's actually not. There's nothing in the hand. It's just a fist.
He's got to punch you in the face.
I'm about to punch you in the face.
So before they punch us.
Good Tomer. Very good Tomer. Okay, guys. So before they punch us, please like, share, and subscribe. Help us reach more people across the world with what is happening here in Jerusalem, so you know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And by the way, we have very special guests coming from the United States, right? Including my very own father. I don't know if you can see, if they can see you, but at the end of the show, they're going to come up and say hi, ask some questions. So you have time to prepare your questions and make it tough on Mati, so we will have a hard time answering.
I love that kind of stuff. I feel like the podcast is a lot more fun when we have people join us.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, again, even in the sense on the ground, I feel like things have been at a much higher level than they have in the past. I think the radar that me and you feel is through our kids. Things were quiet for a while. The kids are calm. Then the last week, I want to say it's been the last week and a half now, almost on a daily basis, we've had sirens. And what's odd is they've come from different sources. Last weekend, the kids and I were up in the Golan Heights near the Hermon Mountain.
Oh yeah, from what was it, Hezbollah or other terrorists affiliated? Nobody's taking responsibility.
Hamas. We were just waking up on Saturday morning. This is like a week ago, and you hear the very distinct thuds of Iron Dome, but there's no sirens. And I look at my phone, there's nothing, no alarms, very odd. 5 or 6 minutes later in the Telegram groups, they start saying, oh, it's some kind of faction within Lebanon that's firing missiles onto Metula, which is a community in northern Israel. A whole bunch of intercepts. The next day we come back home, intercepts in Jerusalem. The next day, and it's been over a week of that. And what's different is some of these intercepts have been over big cities in Israel. The day before yesterday, I was at our offices to the west of the city, and it was above that area, which is close to where both of us live. That's more common. We were here in the studio, a couple days ago, and there were intercepts over Jerusalem. That's very odd. That doesn't happen often.
Yeah, definitely. They don't want to hit the the Temple Mount.
I don't think they care.
Oh, they just fire toward the direction of Israel.
I don't think they care.
Mati, it just drives me crazy that these Houthis, wake up almost every day, launch this $1 million worth of a ballistic missile at Israel, and most of them never met an Israeli, never met a Jew. I think that all of them, how many Houthis did you meet? I'm not talking about Tomer. He's not really a Houthi, so.
Yeah, Tomer to set the record straight, we joke about this. Tomer's actually Kurdish more than he is Yemenite.
He's like 7 generations born in Jerusalem, if you go for real.
No, it's funny you say this. I forget who we were having a conversation with the other day, where someone says, we've never ever met a Houthi. Who's actually ever met a Houthi? and it started this conversation of maybe they don't actually exist.
Yeah, maybe.
And it's just like a propaganda machine for the Iranians. It's a bunch of a couple Yemeni guys pretending to be a militia. Anyway, the reality, we've actually gone on a deep dive on the Houthi topic recently. I think we had one that aired a couple days ago on our YouTube channel, where I interviewed an expert on Houthis. It's really interesting. They are radical to a degree that is hard for us to understand, and they've destroyed their country to a degree that's hard for us to understand. And not only that, the Iranians don't actually fully control them.
Yes.
They have a cooperation, and the Iranians will say oftentimes, no, listen, we can't just tell them to stop. They don't listen. And Trump says to them, well, tough luck, buddy, because you're the ones who
you gave them all the weapons, you trained them.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility.
It's on you.
Yeah.
It's on you. And that relationship, by the way, I think was a very, very wise thing to do when it comes to negotiation, because now when the Houthis attack, one, you see these attacks by the U.S. armed forces that are much more severe than they were in the past.
Definitely, much more severe than the Israeli attacks also.
Yeah. I mean, they're systematically going after targets related to the Houthis.
We're talking about, 15 days straight that the United States Air Force are targeting Houthi leaders and successfully eliminating them.
Yeah, and some of their senior leadership is underground, literally.
Yeah, super underground.
Yeah, super underground, hiding from the attacks. And at the same time, you can also see the efficacy of the attacks in the sense that the Houthis are reporting a greater number of casualties than they have in the past.
Yeah.
As in, their bases, their outposts that are being struck are actually effective in that. Again, we've talked about this in the past. There is no fully eliminating the very last rocket from the very last Houthi hands, because they're spread over an enormous country. And even internally within the Houthi movement, they don't necessarily listen to each other.
Yeah.
They have centralized leadership, but it's more tribal than it is a hierarchy in the military sense.
Yes.
So when you take that into account, the Houthis are with us to stay for a while.
Yeah, well, like Hamas, like ISIS is still with us, So ISIS was defeated, but it still exists in Syria, in Iraq.
In the government of Syria.
Yeah, exactly. in many places. They actually rose to power again now, definitely.
They did attack the U.S. carrier lately.
Well, they've done it many times.
What, the USS Truman?
Yeah, and with that, they hit bad lately. They hit bad. Just today they announced by the U.S. what's happening around them, and El Arabiya say that they lost most of their missiles.
Who did? The Iranians?
The Houthis.
Well, the Houthis still have some missiles to fire at us, apparently.
Yeah,
no, I would dare say that the fact that they, I hesitate to say this out loud so they don't prove us wrong.
What?
That the fact that they're only firing one missile at a time indicates that they have a shortage. Because earlier on in the war, the Iranians and the Houthis together with them were launching
multiple, including drones. It was drone swarms, multiple drones at the same time, basically, and ballistic missiles. It was harder for the anti-aircraft defensive systems of Israel to intercept everything at once.
Yeah, they were trying to overwhelm our systems, and they did succeed several times in doing that and punching through. I think we all remember the attack that hit a building downtown Tel Aviv.
Also in Eilat.
Yeah.
The building of Segev.
Yeah, I don't want to say it out loud. It hit the office of a member of our team in Tel Aviv. We're laughing because we love him, not because
now he's freaking out, by the way. He's like, my name.
Anyway, all that to say, so in the past they were more successful. Now, and again, you need to think about this. We've been at war with the Iranians and their proxies for 16 months now, something like that. Going on 16 months in a couple of weeks. going on 16 months. At one point or another, a war becomes a war of logistics and not just a war of bravery or strategy. And you start running out of munitions. Even the great U.S. Army, with all its forces and all the budget and an annual budget that is greater than most countries' national budget, still when they run war games about a war in the South China Sea or war against the Chinese, you often project that within, and listen to this number, 7 to 14 days you run out of the majority of your main munitions. Wow. If you're going out to full-out war, because it's millions against millions of soldiers.
Listen, I felt it, and you felt it in the Gaza Strip. In this war against Hamas, after a few months of war, intensive fighting, the bombs just ran out.
Yeah, you start running dry.
The parts to replace whatever was broken on the tanks ran out. And that's why it was so important to receive new supplies from the United States, our biggest ally, from which we buy all of our weapons and stuff.
Let's move the focus to Iran. Because lately, what's going diplomatically is crazy. Trump saying around that he's going to eliminate the regime over there and destroyed. And on the other hand, we see a negotiation happening in the background.
So let's quote to Trump before we move on. Okay, so the United States President Donald Trump threatened Tehran, if Iran will not reach a deal, she will be bombed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I want to be fair here for a minute. I think people look at what President Trump, the way he communicates, and they criticize him. Oh, look, he's using social media to communicate. Oh, look, he's using threats. Wait a minute, I feel like there's a duplicit moral here, because when they talk about the Iranians, they do the same thing.
Exactly.
And no one criticizes them. They'll say, Khamenei has a Twitter. I don't think he operates
in Hebrew.
In Hebrew.
In Hebrew, to threaten the Israelis directly.
Not a Twitter, but it's an X account.
Yeah.
And he'll threaten Israel in Hebrew.
Exactly.
And it's got his little, his face on that. And then when Trump does it, oh no, why is the world leader, communicating that way?
Lowering himself to talk on social media. That's the way to reach people.
It makes complete sense. And he's communicating directly with them. So there's no misunderstanding. And he says to them very clearly, look, I have in one hand an enormous carrot, and in the other hand, an enormous stick. And if you don't play well, I'm going to beat you with both of them. and he's been doing so. And the level of threats he's been releasing are something that's worth tracking with. Because on the sanction side of things, he says, and look, there was sort of we say in Hebrew, you wink at the agreement. There were sanctions on the Iranians, but everyone knows that they were able to still sell their oil and sell their goods and move cash in a roundabout way through Pakistan, India, China.
Up until a few weeks ago through Iraq, they were forging documents for their oil tankers to look like they're Iraqi oil tankers and not Iranian oil tankers.
And everyone knows this.
Yeah.
Every government of the world knows these kind of things, and they know that they were able at a cost to circumvent some of the sanctions against them. Not all, but
they're
still alive.
That's a big amount of money.
And the U.S. looks at this channel of cash that's coming in and says to the Iranians, look, we all know how you're making money. And if you don't play nice with us, we're cutting it off. And we're not saying we're cutting it off. We're taking everything away from you.
Yeah.
We're taking away your oil, your cash, your land routes, and they'll point it out to them. We know that you're moving things through the land to this country, and we know that you're selling oil through these proxies.
Yeah.
And we know that you're circumventing sanctions on buying computer chips and different things through these third-party companies. We're going to take it all away from you. You are going bankrupt. And they look at that and they started screaming like a little child that's been caught red-handed of we'll negotiate, but not under pressure.
Not directly with the United States and through third-party mediators. And we will not touch the nuclear program. The nuclear program is not a military program, etc., and all these
I find it to be
very good stuff.
It's like they're screaming, stop scaring us. We'd love to negotiate, but you're so aggressive. Oh no, evil America.
Yeah, talking about Iranians that call America the great Satan and Israel the small Satan, and burn American and Israeli flags.
That's been their that's been their negotiation line for 3 or 4 weeks now. Instead of negotiating in let's call it in good faith to a certain degree. I don't like using that term with them, but instead of actually directly negotiating, they're playing this emotional abuse game of we're the victims. Stop torturing and tormenting us, evil U.S. And the world looks at that. I think everyone's just laughing at this commentary on them. It's you are the masterminds behind every terrorist attack in this region. You are the power that's funding all this evil, and now you're a little uncomfortable because it's being used against you.
Yeah,
tough
exactly.
luck. Tough luck. Deal with it.
Yeah, remove all your military capabilities, start feeding your people, build up the roads, give them electricity for a full day, which they don't have in Iran, by the way. And then you can talk about doing some good in the world. But it's not their agenda. It's not their ideology.
Well, I think, we've talked about this several times. The Iranian government is under a lot of internal pressure. And not only them. Every country that misbehaves is oftentimes dealing, first of all, with internal problems. Mm-hmm. And that's the root of their, not the root, but it's part of the root of their aggression. The Iranians have a huge amount of internal problems, financial, social pressures, a rising wave of demonstrations for years against them.
Yeah.
The public riots to the point where they have to use live fire against demonstrators in Iran to stop the...
Or arrest them and put them in jail, torture them and do stuff like that.
They torture, they rape, they murder people that demonstrate against them.
They take them, they kill them in the middle of the street from
they string them from cranes.
Oh my
in the
God.
They have mass executions in Iran. And the number was... What was her name, Tomer? The Iranian expert that we interviewed in the...
wow, I forgot.
She was really good.
Wow. I will check.
It'll come back to us.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we interviewed, and there's this direct correlation. The level of violence government uses against its population is an indication of how weak they are. And oftentimes when they feel weakened and threatened, then they use violence also against their external perceived enemies.
Yes.
And that's what we see with the Iranians right now.
Yeah, well, that's what we see with Hamas in the Gaza Strip as well.
Yeah,
we just had
terrible.
some protesters rising up in certain locations, and then Hamas opened live fire against the Palestinian people.
No, it was much worse than that.
And kidnapped them and executed some of them.
They murdered entire families.
Yeah.
And then they gave them on the last minute back to the head of the family, bleeding, one of the head of the demonstration.
Just to tell this story in its fullness, to demonstrate who we're dealing with in Gaza. There was a wave of demonstrations against Hamas that was open. It wasn't like people, like in a crowd. It was people speaking to a camera saying, screw these guys. Essentially, we don't want.
Well, that's what they said.
Yeah, we don't want
Hamas to rule us. We don't want war. We want peace. We want to give up the guns and the fighting, and we want to live here. Basically, we don't want another round of fighting.
What is this?
Tamar
Gindin was the expert on Iran. Yeah. It's worth looking that up on our YouTube channel. It was a fascinating look into Iranian society that really gave me an understanding of how life operates. But to talk about Hamas, you look at the level of violence they're using, and it makes it so clear that we have to negotiate only out of a position of power. And the same applies to the Iranians. As long as they're not under pressure, that's what's been happening. They play the long game. They negotiate. Oh no, now it's not a good time. We're celebrating.
Let's wait 3 years for the next administration of the United States to change.
We're changing the carpets.
Maybe it will be better for us.
Exactly. We're changing the carpets in our government building. Come back in 6 months.
Yeah.
There's always an excuse to draw out things in the negotiation.
Just about to upgrade our missile systems. Let's wait till the next
election cycle. Yeah. And now suddenly there's this intense pressure on them. And more importantly, it's this combined effect because the Iranians have been caught in their weakness. Mm-hmm. All the threat that and again, we need to go back to the psyche that you and I carried before October 7th, 2023. The threat of
different world
that we're living in. We thought, and when I say we, I mean the Israeli collective and the Israeli leadership spoke of the Iranian threat through Hezbollah and directly through Iran as a nemesis that we would be very hard-pressed to fight against. The missiles will come in the tens of thousands of them, and they'll eliminate our electricity and blow up the cities of the north, and we'll live in
cyber attacks, and we'll go back to the Stone Age and stuff like that,
etc., etc.
Yeah.
And then we suddenly found out that the big bad wolf is not as bad as we thought him to be. Mm-hmm. And when we sort of lost the fear of using the power that we really have, and we unleashed the Israeli Air Force and the Israeli ground forces and the intelligence and the naval warfare, suddenly there is no more Hamas, there is no more Hezbollah. We're not afraid of the Hezbollah rockets. We blew up their weapon stashes. These guys spent tens of billions of dollars building up the weaponry
for 20 years.
Yeah, we knocked some of those things out in hours.
Yeah,
in hours once we chose to make the.
There is no more Assad in Syria.
And then Iran itself, that had this, this was projecting this power image of you'll never be able to touch us. We have everything underground.
We have the ring of fire around you.
And the bunkers, and if you dare come in, your Air Force will be knocked out of the sky. And suddenly, they have no surface-to-air missiles. Their batteries have proven to be ineffective against our Air Force. And the U.S. looks at that and says, That's good news.
That's good for us. Yeah, we can just go fly over there.
Yeah, we can fly in
Israel did the pilot. Now we can do the job.
We can fly in helicopters. Yeah,
and we proved, and this is I think very important for regional geopolitics. We proved that when you look at the axis of, let's call it funding powers, there's one channel that's Israel and its friends, the U.S., European countries, and it's the same people, by the way, that are supporting the Ukraine in the war against Russia. Those forces are the financial, the agricultural, the mechanical, the weaponry system behind everything that's happening on this side and opposing Iran. Iran is backed by the Russians, and the Russians are also backed by the Chinese. And it's that axis that's trying to create, an opposing force.
An alternative, yeah.
And they've been proven to be considerably weaker than what people perceive them to be. Their weapon systems don't work at great numbers. The Russians, and we talk about this, to keep fighting in the Ukraine, they've been supplied by the Chinese. Yes. They ran out of drones. They ran out of munitions on many, many different fronts.
They're using North Korea soldiers.
Yeah, that's ridiculous at this point.
Yeah. That was about the flip-flops of North Korean soldiers in Ukraine.
They have soldiers that look like they came out of a World War II movie.
Oh, no, that's the Houthis with the flip-flops. Sorry.
Yeah, the Houthis are with the flip-flops. The North Koreans fighting in Ukraine, and you just see them. It literally looks like...
They came out
what's
of
the expression?
70s.
Cannon fodder, where they were just sent to be...
Yeah.
It was brutal.
So Israel now is changing basically the game, and also the United States. So every missile that is launched from Houthis, from Hezbollah, from all these proxies are basically Iran's responsibility, and Israel and the United States has the right to respond directly against Tehran. We've seen these statements from politicians, from former politicians, from active politicians in Israel and also in the United States.
Yeah.
Are we going to see really an attack directly on Iranian soil by the U.S. or by Israel?
Or maybe we'll see an attack of Iran on America, on the Diego Garcia standoff.
So it's interesting you asked that question. We talked about this, I think, in last week's podcast.
Yeah.
My understanding is no one, and the U.S. says this openly, and so do the Iranians, no one really wants to go to full-out war. That isn't on anyone's really, the top of their wish list. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be painful. We talked in last week's podcast in depth about how much it would cost to go to war against the Iranians, how disruptive it would be for trade, how disruptive it would be for the price of oil and dried goods around the world.
Wars are expensive, yeah.
Yeah, but especially if you're sitting on the main sea route in the world, traveling into Europe and the Middle East, then it's very expensive. It will cost the Saudis greatly. It costs the Egyptians in lost revenue from the Suez Canal.
Well, already the Egyptians are losing billions of dollars just since this war started because shipping lanes are not going through the Suez Canal.
Exactly. And it would cost the Iranians, it would be a bankruptcy moment for the Iranian government, where they would lose a lot of their national infrastructure to the point where they wouldn't be able to rebuild it. They would lose their trade routes.
Most likely the regime will collapse if this happens.
Collapse would be dramatically weakened.
The whole country.
So both them and the Americans are saying, look, this isn't number one priority. We're trying to reach an agreement, but they're looking at it from a very different position. The U.S. is saying to them, reach an agreement or else. If you don't play along and move swiftly, then we're going to military action. And they've done everything that is needed, including moving several carrier groups into the Middle East, including a huge amount of aerial assets and the logistical support to back them. The U.S. is ready to attack. This isn't just lip service. It is something that they're planning and preparing to do. They've trained with the Israeli Air Force. The targets are all assigned. Everyone knows where they're flying when the day comes. And so that's on the table dramatically. The Iranians also haven't been sitting on their hands. They're not idle in action. They've both been making very, very clear threats. But at the same time, they have a mechanism that is all propped up to do what? Disrupt.
Yeah, disrupt the maritime shipping economy, terrorize this region, fund terrorist groups, also in the underground world. So selling drugs, influencing banking systems, cyber attacks, they're in there. And also, enforcing terror in Europe, in the United States, in South America. So they're not just involved in this region. They also have an influence to disrupt the world everywhere.
Yeah, and they've done so successfully many, many times.
Yeah.
Hezbollah, we need to remind people think it's only a regional issue. Hezbollah have bombed Jewish communities in South America in the past.
Yeah.
People forget about this. They blew up. We talk about again the long arm of the Iranian terrorist machine. They've blown up buildings in countless places. They've had people that are ideologically aligned with them try to kill civilians in European cities. So this isn't something that's exclusive to just this part of the world. And if it isn't dealt with in this part of the world, in the Middle East, it will reach the shores of Europe. And one might say it already has.
I think so. I think it's already there, and plans are, on the motion to create some attacks. Absolutely. Because they've been severely weakened here in this region. They cannot extract damage, and the projection of power is very, very low at this moment. So they need some wins somewhere. So if they cannot attack Israel, they'll attack Jewish places or Israeli places in Europe or in the United States or in South America.
Yeah, and now we have this standoff that's taking place, which I think is a very symbolic moment. There's
that's pretty cool. The Diego Garcia standoff.
Yeah,
it's like this little island, very far in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
I don't know where it is.
I'm
going to look it up.
Look, it's like in the middle of nowhere.
That is in the middle of nowhere.
It's in the
and the United States. It's a British island, by the way. Okay, and the United States placed some very strong weaponry, B-2 stealth bombers there, and in response, so Iran is seeing this, standoff going on. And they are threatening, this is according to the Tehran Times. This is the mouthpiece of the Iranian government. It's a newspaper in Iran. That the Iranian people are placing missiles on the launch pads in their underground military facilities, pointing towards the Diego Garcia island because of the U.S. military build-up there.
And the British.
And the British, yeah. So that's also a threat against Britain, against the United States, basically against all the anti-Iran coalition.
Yeah.
It sounds like the Cuban missile crisis.
Exactly what I was going to say. Where you look back to that moment, we've been talking for a couple of weeks now, what is going to happen? And I think the answer is sometimes it all might come down to one stupid decision or misunderstanding between the Iranians and the U.S. or a proxy force.
Somebody launches a missile, and then everything goes out of control.
We go ballistic.
Yeah, exactly.
And that really is an option. If you think about it, if someone in Iran says like, look, we feel like an attack is imminent. Someone corrected me. It's imminent.
Imminent. Right. I remember that.
If an attack is about to happen any moment now. So someone in Iran is going to say, look, it's coming. Let's launch the missiles. And then they launch the missiles, but there was no attack coming. Now the attack is coming. So it's that moment of decision that might take up the entire region in flames just because there was a misunderstanding. And that's how explosive things are right now between what's been happening in, let's call it the U.S. amassing forces in this region. Israel sort of sitting on all the red buttons.
Yeah.
And the Iranians are doing the same thing, and their proxies are too.
That's the fear, okay? The proxies. Let's say there is this tiny proxy group, might not even be the Houthis, can be an affiliate terror group of the Houthis that also hate Israel, hate the Jewish people, and hate the United States. This is kind of a thing that's going around, very popular these days across the Middle East, especially.
You also hate Israel?
Okay. So let's say they have like a rocket or a missile, and they fire it at this Garcia island,
Diego
Garcia. And then the U.S. said, okay, every missile against us, we attack
missiles,
Iran. They attack Iran, and then Iran begins to launch at Israel, and it becomes this, huge war because of this one tiny terror group that launched a rocket.
Yeah, my hope is that's not what happens. My hope is that the Iranians understand that the threat against them is substantial enough on a military level that they pause what they're doing completely and go back on their, let's call it, military nuclear capabilities, and they go back on their, let's call it, doctrine of spreading evil and terrorism around the region, and they get something in return for that, a removal of some of the sanctions, technology that will go into the country. I imagine that that's where they're going, and I would imagine that that's the best solution for everyone involved, only if it's truly enforceable. And I'd put one more thing in the mix over there, which is I think we've been asking the question for a really long time. How is it that Iran is still up and fighting? I mean, they've taken a dramatic hit financially for years now when it comes to their nuclear plan. It's killed their GDP. It's killed their growth. They have mass unemployment in the country. They have massive numbers of people demonstrating in the streets on a regular basis. How do they keep going? And then how do they keep funding this nuclear program?
It's expensive. It's very expensive.
Well, it might be possible that they're not actually funding the nuclear program.
Did
you see this last week?
What? No, I didn't see it.
There was a series of headlines that was quoting, it was an intelligence report by the CIA, I believe, that came out last summer. It was like in August of last year. And it essentially says, look, we have indications. And I ran like a whole...
That's super interesting, actually.
It was very interesting.
I mean, what you were going to say, I remember now. Yeah.
They ran... It was a whole series of like sort of sources saying like, look, it might be that they don't actually have... They've sort of paused on their military nuclear program.
So they're way behind on what they actually say that they have in terms of military capabilities?
Yeah. So here, it says, so it's a U.S. intelligence assessment released in July 24. Indicates that Iran is not currently developing nuclear weapons. It did expanded activities to do that in the future, but it says that they don't actually have as much as they've been stating, which makes sense. If they're trying to bluff towards an agreement, why would you keep spending crazy amounts of money on something you're planning to shut down?
Yeah, exactly. That's
interesting. It's interesting.
I don't know. But anyway, what can you do? You can't trust that analysis and just say, okay, they don't have a nuclear bomb, let's leave them alone, because maybe they do. I mean, the risk is too high.
Absolutely.
Not to act in case that they have it.
Do you remember the story where Israel accidentally discovers that Syria has and it was working at the time on a nuclear reactor?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember this? This is like what, like under Ehud Olmert as prime minister.
Yeah.
Olmert was prime minister, and the Mossad ran, I forget what it was, somewhere in Europe. They ran an operation, and they stumbled onto documents that indicated that Syria had a nuclear program. No one anywhere in the world knew this existed, except for the Syrians and the people who supplied them. No one knew this existed. I think they bought it from the North Koreans, if I remember correctly.
The best seller in the country.
Yeah, best supplier for nuclear weapons.
Number one retailer.
They're not our sponsor, by the way.
The show isn't sponsored. At all
by King Jong-un.
Or
however you say his name.
We stumble onto their nuclear program, and then we bomb it. And then we never talk about it for years to come until it's leaked by Netanyahu's government.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we stumble onto it. There's the same chance happens in many other countries. They might be working on a program and we would never know about it until it's too late. So as you say, you can never wait and you can never take a chance with these kind of things. You have to take action. My hope is that we don't get to the point of no return, is that the Iranians back down. Look, the U.S. Army and the U.S. Defense Forces, they mean business. And the Israeli Air Force means business. Yes. We've been practicing for years. We've been spending tens of billions of dollars prepping for this moment. It is on the table as much as anything could ever be on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My hope is that they back down before we have to reach that moment.
Well, until then, we've been fighting. We've been on high alerts. We've suffered a lot of casualties here in the country. Also in terms of soldiers that lost their lives. We still have 59 hostages in the Gaza Strip. We're deep in this war. Just in the north, like around 50,000 acres of forests were burnt. And not just the forest, also the communities of Israel. We've been to Manara. We saw the houses with the holes of the anti-rocket missiles that were launched into civilian houses. Like, devastation is all over the place. Only now, people are starting to return to their houses, starting to rebuild the communities. You've been to the north, so I guess tourism is resuming. Yeah. It's actually a lovely time to come visit Israel. We have some tourists here with us in the studio.
The spring is coming.
Hey, Abba. And it's great to see that people are starting to come to Israel. It shows a lot of support to see you right here with us. But on top of that, Mati, we are in the middle, I think we're already like a month and a half into a campaign to help rebuild Israel. Okay, rebuild Israel after more than a year of war.
Yeah, I should say this show is sponsored by us and the viewers of this podcast and our shows that have been incredible.
Yeah,
we raised considerably more money than we expected to raise, and I think it was exciting for me, as I know it was for you. We ran a campaign to plant trees in Israel. We started around Tu B'Shvat, which is sort of the tree planting
festival of trees.
Festival of trees in Jewish tradition, and we've been going for a while now. We're at the point where we're going to be planting. What is it? Are we past 10,000 trees at this point? Getting close to
that. More than that.
More than that. Yeah. We're many thousands of trees that are being planted by the viewers of this channel.
Yes.
That's really exciting.
By people around the world that care about Israel and they want to plant something that will only bear fruit maybe 10, 20, 15 years from now. I don't know how long it takes each type of tree to grow in Israel, but it's really nice to see that people have faith in Israel a decade from now, and they want to invest in that. That's what makes me excited.
Exactly, and we're running this campaign just a little bit longer. It isn't too late. There still is much room to plant more trees.
Much trees to be planted.
Yes. Yes. There's a whole lot of room to plant more trees in this country. And if people want to get on the bandwagon to do this, they still can. We have a website that's up. It's tbn.org/rebuildisrael, one word. So again, it's tbn.org/rebuildisrael. You can go on there. It doesn't cost much to plant a tree in this country. Yeah. And we've been there. We actually planted trees ourselves in the pouring rain.
In the mud, yeah.
In the pouring rain. I planted a bunch of trees in the community I now live in when we just moved in. And now they're, 20, 30 feet tall, some of those trees. It's very exciting to see something you put in yourself to affect this land. And I'll say to people that do this, we will have an entire forest essentially that's planted by the viewers of this channel.
Yes, we already have, and hopefully it will be bigger and bigger as time goes by.
So last chance, get on the bandwagon. It's tbn.org/rebuildisrael, one word. Make a donation to plant more trees in Israel. So as we're wrapping this up, we talked about the tension in this region. We talked about how volatile everything is. I think we can talk for 1 second about the diplomatic efforts.
What, the letter that Trump sent to the leader of Iran, Khamenei?
Diplomacy in the shadows.
Diplomacy in the shadows. Interesting. But, okay, so basically the United States sent a letter to the supreme leader of Iran asking, okay, what you said, let's move this on the diplomatic level. But if not, we are willing also to imply force against you and destroy your military program. Of course, the Iranian leader rejected this letter severely and said that we will not negotiate under threats from the Iranians, from the United States against the Iranians, and we are willing to negotiate through third parties or lower the tone of your threats and then negotiate with us.
Yeah, and I call their bluff on that. Every negotiation should be held, especially when you're talking about adversaries at war. It should be held when the threat of going back to war is on the table.
Yeah, exactly.
That is exactly the place we should do it. Their request of like, oh no, this is unpleasant for us, please stop. It's like, nonsense. Why would anyone do that? It should be maximum pressure on every front until they give in.
Until there is an agreement.
Yeah, until there's an agreement. And we don't know the exact dates that are put in that letter, but what we do know is that there was a timeline put in place that says we're not going to let you draw this out indefinitely as you have in the past. If you don't reach an agreement with us now, we're going to war.
Yeah, and you can see in Iran there's also a dialogue between the Iranian president and the Iranian supreme leader. The president of Iran seemed to be more, keen toward dialogue and toward development of the country. That's why he got elected by the Iranian people also, to improve their lives. So he wants to ease the economic pressure on the Iranian people. That's why he got elected. While the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, does not care about the people. He cares about the long-term game. But what's very interesting, Mati, is that he's, 82? I'm really curious to know what will happen the day after he passes from this world.
Well, I would hope that the regime...
Hopefully it will be sooner rather than later.
Well, I hope the regime is replaced faster and we don't have to wait on him to die.
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing for the Iranian people. But look, we're at this really, really unique moment in time in the Middle East. I can't remember a time since let's call it the post 9/11 attacks on Iraq and Afghanistan, where this number of forces was amassed in the Middle East, but also where there was a willingness and a public support of pressuring let's call it the top tier adversaries into an agreement. We're talking the kind of pressure that is you don't cooperate, we're obliterating your country. And that's the way it should be, by the way.
We're taking you back to the Stone Age, basically, yeah.
It should. Why not use a heavy hand against a regime like the Iranians? They're openly against everything in Western thought and behavior. They plan to nuke Western countries if they're given the chance. They try to destroy every democracy and every quality of life element of the Middle East. Why not use a heavy hand against them?
Yeah, exactly.
They deserve it.
They're this region's and maybe the world's biggest drug dealers and human traffickers and using the dark web, dark markets in order to fund their operations. Yeah. I mean, they're the worst guys ever imaginable.
They're the supervillains.
We cannot be nice to them. That's what it is. Yeah. Not the Iranian people again. We're talking about the Iranian regime, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. We love the Iranian people, by the way. Many of them are our viewers. And hey, we're praying for you guys. Thank you for also praying for us. But I mean, hold on. Hopefully very soon you'll have a new, better government that you deserve. And then we can fly to Tehran, check it out, in a good way. Not fly with bombers and stuff.
I can go on a family roots trip to Iran.
Yeah, Mati is Persian, by the way.
Partly, yeah. So, I think that's it for today. We have time for a few more questions.
Yeah,
since we have a team that came all the way from the other side of the world, let's give them some light of day.
Yeah.
And Hanania is pointing out, Yair's father sitting in the audience. Mm-hmm. He's pointing out that some of the members of the team are wearing the solidarity pin with the hostages. You all are wearing, and I appreciate that. And we're here, we talk about this on a regular basis. We want people to remember that the hostages remain in the heart and the minds of people in Israel, and that we're not stopping until the hostages are back.
And not just in Israel, also people from the United States that not just voiced their support, remotely. They actually came here. This is a small group, but they came in person. You guys went to the hostage square. You went to the Gaza area, or going to go there soon. And really to see boots on the ground, like we like to say here, everything that's happening here. And it means the world for us. I mean, I'm sure that you've spoken and met with Israelis, and just for them to see that you are coming here in person to be with them during this time, it really means the world and changes the heart, the way that we see, the world, because we thought that everybody was against us until people like you stood up. So thank you. You have any questions? You want to come up here and ask a question? Anything. You can. Come.
Come up there.
Yeah, even better.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
I have you come stand over
Come stand over here.
תעזור לה שלא תיפול.
right behind in the middle.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. There you go.
Okay. Thank you so much for that wonderful program.
Can you come up a little closer so we can...
I'd like to say that I see you two almost every day on YouTube.
We apologize
I watch
for that.
Boots on the Ground.
I hope we look better in real life.
I watch My State.
Sadly, we don't.
I have a couple of questions. One is, I saw the powerful and moving speech that released hostage Eli Sharabi gave to the UN. Any indication that that made any difference whatsoever to the UN and to the world?
What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think that in terms of national views and public opinions, it might didn't do too much. But I'm sure that some people saw it and had a change of heart. And that means something also. Because you can't convince the radicals and the ultra extreme, those that want to kill us, those that don't think that Jewish people are actually humans, that grew to think and were trained to think that we are monsters. So I'm not trying to reach these guys, but we're trying to reach those that don't have an opinion. And sadly, our enemies have a very, very good public opinion system. If they're able to reach United States campuses, elite campuses, the brightest of the minds in the West, then we are doing something wrong. So everything that we do in order to change and share the opinions, share what's happening here in the truth, like you guys coming here, then you go back home. If you tell your family members, I've been here, I've seen the atrocities of October 7, I've seen what Hamas did, I've seen the cars piled up on top of each other. It's real. It's not a propaganda of the Zionists or, the Jewish people or the state of it. It's real. Mm-hmm. It happened. There is evil in this world and there is good. And we need to stand on the side of good in this world. And
absolutely.
So I think every little thing helps. But, to convince an entire nation state that is against Israel to change its color, that's very hard.
Yes. Well, this is the question that Eli Sharabi asked them. Where is your humanity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It just is mind-boggling that, you know, the world does not understand.
Yeah, yeah. And he was in captivity by Hamas, just recently released, and now he's going around the world and speaking firsthand what he experienced, who really is the Hamas terrorist organizations. And this is what it takes just to try and convince people, but you know, most people just don't believe, because this is something spiritually. This is like more than just,
that's right,
you know, people, ideas, debates, politics. This is spiritual. And, you know, with this such a strong evil spirit, then it's very hard to change people's minds. So, I mean, I think on top of sharing the truth, we also need to really pray for the situation. You know, I think we've been saying that every show since day one of this war, that we need to know the truth, share the truth, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem, pray for the situation, and make it personal. So now that you've been here, you met some Israelis. Hope we did a good impression on you guys. So when you go back home, you can, you know, pray for specific hostage, for a soldier, for a city, something personal. And that really makes a difference, because our God is a personal God.
That is right.
Yeah.
I had one more
just a
thought
few
to that.
minutes ago, your colleague Alon was telling me about his 6-year-old son, how he asked his father, you know, can we pray for the children in Gaza? Can we pray for the evil? You know, that their hearts will be changed by God.
What was your name? Your name.
I'm sorry?
Your name.
My name, Noel.
Noel.
Noel May.
I appreciate that you asked that question. I'd say that if there's something that people need to be praying around the world, if you care for Israel and what happens here, is to pray for the children in Israel.
Yes.
Try explaining, forget, you know, a 6-year-old, try to explain to a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, why 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 countries are trying to destroy our country at once. There is no logical explanation to it. It's very, very hard to explain to kids. And we need, you know, their hearts to be prayed over and cared for. And I'd say another thing here, where prayers do have an effect, because when you get the right person in leadership, it makes a difference. Just, what was it, like 3 days ago, Ariel Bivas goes on, 60 Minutes?
Yeah.
He goes on 60 Minutes. Ariel Bivas lost Shiri, his wife, and 2 of their kids.
All redheads.
Oh,
if
yeah,
you remember from the videos of the
Exactly.
Hamas when they kidnapped the people, there's the family of redheads, wife and 2 kids.
Yeah, then Bibas was on 60 Minutes.
Tragic story, you know, just heart-wrenching for anyone who watched it. But he says something optimistic. He says, I want people to know that the reason I'm a free man now is because of President Trump. He said that. Did you see that headline? He says, I want people to know that because of the pressure that the U.S. government put on Hamas, I'm a free man today. So there is an effect when you pray for leadership, and when the right person is in the right place, it does make a dramatic difference. It really, really does. And I think when we pray for every hostage that remains in Hamas captivity, and every family that awaits the return of alive or dead, by the way, hostages, it doesn't matter. They want to be reunited with their lost family members.
Yeah, the family want to bury their loved one and to end this part of their life.
Yeah. So prayers matter. They make a difference.
Yeah.
And I think we can't stop until we see that. And on the justice topic, it is what it is. There are people that will choose evil and are morally corrupt. There are countries that will turn a blind eye to human suffering because that's not their top agenda. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't care about telling the truth about what really happens and trying to evoke a response of morality and care and love out of people around the world, because I think in the majority of people, those emotions do exist, and they are susceptible to being to respond to the truth.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we think that we can do nothing because it is bigger than us. But each of us can do something in our sphere of influence with whom we come in contact. Several months ago, I was here. I wanted to volunteer with Israel, but I couldn't find anybody to sponsor me. But during those 3 months I was here, I went to Ofakim, where we were able to get permission from the city to plant flowers at the memorial that they have there. And I went out with a woman who is doing art therapy with those who are trying to recover from this trauma. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for coming here, for sure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Mati. Yeah, I think it really makes a difference. And what I learned from this experience, with you, with TBN Israel in the past year and a half, is if you really take one step towards what God wants you to do, then He will open more doors, and then you can really make, an impact around the world without even imagining what you can do. So that's all for today, guys. Thank you for praying. Thank you for being with us. If you haven't subscribed until now, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit this little bell, and share these videos with more people around the world so that we can reach people with the truth of what's happening here in Israel. Had a good time, Mati?
Thank you, Yair.
Thank you, Tomer.
And thank you, Yair's dad.
Have a great time. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. See you again next week.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel.